Hey everyone, welcome back to Works 360. In today's video, I'm upgrading my Afghanistan diorama with a 120mm mortar. This build is a little different though, because the person I'm building it for actually used a 120 in Afghanistan. So getting this right matters. After searching for a while, I finally came across Black Ops models, recommended to me by my buddy over at 11 Charlie Modeling. And if you're into builds like this, you should definitely go and check out his channel. He's putting out some seriously solid work. But for now, let's get into it. Once it was all assembled, I grabbed the Evolution and laid down a full coat of primer on the mortar, the ammo crates, and the rounds. From there, I started building the color. Now, at first, I wasn't really sure which green to use, so I got out some NATO green, shook it up, looked at the color, and figured, this should probably do, especially being able to control the color with the black primer. It's important that you put it on in layers or slowly. I used NATO green on all the ammo crates, the bipod, base plate. It's a pretty solid military green. It's not too bright and it's not too dark. It gives you a good starting point to start to build from. And my son coming in to help. After airbrushing the crates, I decided to switch things up and try hand brushing the mortar bipod and the legs. And honestly, it just wasn't working. No matter what I did, I couldn't get the paint to lay down the way I wanted it. It kept coming out uneven, and it just didn't match the finish I was getting with the airbrush. So, instead of fighting it, I went back to what I knew would work. I mixed up some more NATO green, loaded up that Evolution, and went back in on the bipod and base plate, being really careful to try and avoid getting any overspray on the tube. And honestly, this is one of the reasons I really like using the Evolution CR+. It gives you a ton of control, especially for smaller parts like this, where you need to be precise. That said, I'll be honest, I still feel like I'm learning it. Some days it feels dialed in, and other days I feel like I'm finding it a bit more. But moments like this are where it really starts to click. I moved on to the rounds. I used the airbrush again to spray NATO green across the upper portion of each round, trying to keep it nice and smooth. Then I switched over to the brushwork, painting the fins in silver to give them that metallic look, and adding yellow to the cheese charges for a bit of contrast, and because the cheese charges are yellow. One small detail I really liked was the inside of the storage tubes. I went with Iraqi sand for that, and it ended up being a perfect match for that cardboard look. Just one of those little things that adds a lot without being super obvious. At this point, everything was starting to come together, but something still felt like it was missing. The scene had all the pieces, but it didn't have a moment yet. It didn't feel alive. So that's when I decided to try adding something a little different. So that's when I decided to try adding a smoke effect. I grabbed some cotton, shaped it out, and slid it onto a stick, locking it in place with some hot glue at the bottom and again about halfway up so it wouldn't shift around. Then I brought the airbrush back out. I started with black as a base. I tried to get it all over, but not too much. I wanted there to still be some white left. Next, I layered in the yellow, and I have to admit, this is my first time making a smoke effect, so I didn't want to go overboard with really any of the colors, but I'm pretty happy with how the yellow looks. Now, I didn't have orange on hand, so I had to experiment mixing my own red and yellow, and slowly mixing that color until I was satisfied with an orange, and it was still a little bit red, but I think it worked. After that, I added just a bit more red to deepen it. I didn't want to go too overboard with the red, so I just did light coats. Once that was secure, I mounted a mortar round at the top of the stick, like it had just left the mortar tube. It was at this point where I took a step back and looked at the mortar and it felt like it was missing something. So I went in with a little bit of dry brushing gunmetal gray. And this is one of those techniques that always surprises me. As soon as you start brushing it on, all those little edges and textures you didn't really notice before, they just start to pop. It really adds just enough contrast to bring everything to life without overdoing it. Before I could add anything new, I had to go back and clear out the old setup. All the 81 rounds and gear from the original build had to come out, which I'll probably save for another diorama down the line. And honestly, that part felt a little weird. It was like tearing apart something that already worked just to rebuild it better. But once everything was cleared out, it finally felt like I had a clean slate. That's when I started bringing in the new elements. I began placing the mortar tubes, some loaded, some empty, into the metal crates, along with the rounds themselves. Then I started scattering the empty tubes and lids across the scene, because during a fire mission, nothing stays neat. Things get moved, dropped, thrown aside, whatever needs to happen to keep the rounds downrange. So, instead of placing everything perfectly, I tried to make it feel used, a little chaotic, like something was actually happening in that moment. From there, I positioned the mortar itself, locking it into the scene as a centerpiece. And that's when everything really started to come together. And with that, the upgrade is complete. What started as a good diorama now feels like a real moment, frozen in time. And honestly, this one meant a lot to me, knowing the person I built this for actually used a 120 mortar like this. It pushed me to take it just a little further and really try and get it right. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope you enjoyed coming along with me through the process. If you did, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. But before I go, there is one more thing that I decided to add that it was missing. I forgot to originally put dust on the mortar tube and the scene, so I wanted it to feel a little bit more real. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.